changed technologically. And it's changed structurally in some ways. We had people like Robert Don here who, I mean, it was unheard of to have a black man in charge of the editorial department of a newspaper like the Tribune. And now, see, he may downplay this, but the job he's doing now as public editor, I think, is even more vexing, even more complicated and intricate. He has to craft a column that pleases the readers and doesn't insult the editor, and it's really a difficult job, and I really applaud him for doing it because not many people do it. It's a new position, really, this kind of ombudsman position where you take the position of being critical of the newspaper, and not many people do it well. But I think one of the best at it is this brother here. So that's one of the biggest changes that I see in the media. It has a long way to go, though. It still lacks the ability to provide context. We still don't know why African Americans are 50% of the prisoners in this country, and yet 12% of the population. We don't know why, because the media doesn't provide the American people with a contextual understanding of how we wound up like this. And we don't even understand it. And so the media has to do much better, and it's our job, I think, as African Americans within the media to try to make that history plain.
Cathy, what have been the biggest changes that you have
I think
seen?
the biggest changes have been the impact of the hip-hop culture. How many of you all read Source? How many of you read Vibe? How many of you read Sister to Sister? All right, now you all really need to get into Sister to Sister because the publication started right here in Chicago. Jamie Foster Brown is from Chicago. Her sister Stella is one of the leading columnists in this city, and she's with the Chicago Sun-Times. All right, two sisters who have stayed on top of what's going on, but particularly Jamie in the hip-hop community. One of the things that the hip-hop culture, and the reason I'm in town, is tomorrow evening the History Makers is going to trace the history of hip-hop through the eyes of the godfather, the grandfather now of hip-hop, Russell Simmons, because the hip-hop, right, I will tomorrow night on camera. The whole hip-hop phenomena is, how old? Can somebody tell me how old hip-hop is? All right, let me start at this point. How many of you are into hip-hop? All right, so we're into something we don't know how old it is. Let's take a guess. How old is hip hop? The cultural phenomena known as hip hop. What is hip hop to you?
Somebody said 20.
Who said 20? Okay, any other guesses? 30 years old is how old hip hop is. Now I know you all probably thought that it started with Nelly and 50 Cent, right? It didn't. It started with a brother named Curtis Blow, who is old enough to be everybody in your class's grandfather at this point. And it really didn't start with Curtis Blow. It was called hip hop. But there were recording artists, Louis Jordan and a host of others, Les McCann. There were other artists who did rapping and did the whole thing that came to be known as the phenomena of hip hop. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of going to Europe for the first time. And in Europe, news kiosks, where the little stands in the middle of the street where you can buy magazines and cigarettes and chewing gum, are very, very popular. On every single solitary kiosk that I passed was hip-hop magazines. Vibe, The Source, Sister to Sister, is even local publications. So I would say that in my years, which now are close to 40 years in the media, the most significant change that I have witnessed and lived through is the respect, the acceptance, and the international impact of hip hop, particularly in the area of journalism. I'm certain that it's not news to you that a lot of folks our age sometimes don't know what you all are talking about because we don't know what the terms mean. We certainly sometimes are confused when we read your publications because you all have very effectively developed a whole new language. And that whole new language is so much part of who you are and who you will be that, in my opinion, it behooves all of us, regardless of our age, to understand the cultural phenomenon known as hip-hop. And I just want to say, although it's a little off the subject, that I always try to emphasize with young people writing, which is really what all of us are about. Because you cannot be in the media if you cannot read and write. That's the essence of the media. And I have always felt that if you did three things well, read, write, and count, you could be a success in America. Interestingly enough, most people of color, be they African Americans or Latinos, Hispanics, we can count. We got to count because we got to take $100 and buy $150 worth of stuff with it. All right, so we definitely got to be able to count. Most of us read. Most of us read if it's nothing but the sports section or something that we are interested in. What most of us don't do is write. And you see that particularly prominent in the hip-hop music. Most hip-hop music is in fact just remakes of stuff that was written 20, 30, sometimes 40 years ago. So I just want to say to you, don't be afraid of your pen. Your pen is mightier than your sword or your gun. Take your pen, take your pencil, write each other letters. Even if you don't like somebody, write it down. I don't like your butt. I don't want to see your ass no more. Get out my face. Sign my name. All right? Write each other love letters. Write, 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 write. Because music goes in cycles. And it is going to cycle back, where it is going to be required of recording artists that they learn to write lyrics. A lot of people blame it on the fact that you all are not taught music in schools the way we were. Our generation, we had to take music. You had to be in the choir even if you couldn't sing. You all don't have those type of requirements in high school any longer. But I encourage you to write to yourself. Keep a diary. Write down who ticked you off today or what you feel you did particularly well, what you feel good about. Write about somebody you like, that you got a crush on, that you want to get to. Write about recording artists. One of the good things about the internet, one of the good things about those computers is you all are required to write when you communicate, when you go to those chat rooms. Most people don't understand the same way I said, reading is anything you read. It can be the label on the back of this bottle, just read, which most of us do. But it's the writing. And now this new technology called internet and computers is requiring you to write. So write long and hard, because if you all master reading, writing, and counting, you can do anything you want. You can be as rich as you want. You can be as successful as you want. One of the reasons you do not know the name of most of the hip-hop artists that came before the last crew that's in favor right now is because they don't write. And because they did not write, they had no longevity. If you could read, write, and count, regardless of your industry, even what Taylor talked about today, sweeping the street. If that street sweeper read, writes, and counts, that's how he or she will be recognized. So I just want to say that. Forgive me, Mr. Moderator, it's a little off the topic, but I always, when I get with young people, try to reinforce read, write, and count.
It's not off the topic, it's right on point. Right on point. Maureen?
And I'm going to take you to an activist view of the media, because reading is very revolutionary. My sister that travels with me, Mary Thompson, we just discussed as we were coming over about music. She didn't have, the kids today don't have music in gym like she had back in the day. And so reading, and she will tell you, I get up and I read about 8 newspapers a day. that's money that I put out. Then I read newspapers over the internet. Why? Because I'm comparing stories. I read the Sun-Times, I read the Tribune, and I compare the articles. And I also read the Defender and all local newspapers. I read to compare. Media has changed, and it still has a long way to go. We're still dealing with racism. We're still dealing with sexism. And until we stand up and stop the racism and work toward the sexism, black faces will not be seen in the media portion of what's going on. I open my doors to my station to invite young people to be co-hosts on my show. This gives them an opportunity to have some words and express their views. I also invite hip-hoppers on the station. They're the untapped hip-hoppers who no one has given them a chance to hear and view their music. So until we stop and work on the racism and the sexism and elevate our minds to education, we're going to still get what we've always gotten. So we've got to make the changes within ourselves.
Thank you. Just a couple of points on that from my perspective. There have been, again, over 30 years, there have been so many changes. A couple of them are just technological in terms of how fast the news cycle goes. You know, when we first started in the business, when I first started, it was all kind of based around newspapers. And, there was, your paper came out in the morning, or if you're an afternoon paper, it came out in the afternoon, and there was like almost a 24-hour news cycle. News refreshed almost on a 24-hour basis. Now, with, all news radio and with so many cable stations jumping on every story, it refreshes as soon as it happens. And you're constantly updating. That is one big change. You're just inundated with information. Between that and the internet, which is instantaneous, that's completely different. The other thing is just the number of media outlets. If you include internet, along with magazines, newspapers, radio and TV, and now cable TV. When I grew up in Chicago, there were 6 TV stations. That's it. 6 TV stations. Now, I don't know, there may be 600 when you count all the cable networks. The good news in terms of you, if you're looking at a career in this area, is that means there are many more places to get paid, many more opportunities and many more ways to get in to the media. We've increasingly see the increasing importance of the internet. Not only established internet sites, but now the blog pages where people just are writing things anonymously. Now the media is beginning to pick up on what's being said on that. It's influencing the presidential campaign. It's influencing debate and discussion in a lot of areas, which is interesting because it opens up journalism to what it originally was. Anybody with a printing press or a Xerox machine standing on the street corner. Somebody can anonymously post something on the site, and where it once was completely dismissed because you didn't know where it was, now people are saying, there may be something to that. And then you follow it up and you find it is. So there are many, many more aspects and avenues to getting into this business than there used to be. The other thing I always emphasize when I'm talking to young people, Cathy, is, I asked at the beginning how many people were thinking of this as a career, as some form of the media. But what a lot of people don't realize is, again, how many ways there are into it and how many ways there are to bend your interest into a career in the media. So I put it like this. How many people are interested, say, in fashion? Let's just show of hands. Fashion? Hands? One hand? Two hands? 3 hands? Okay. How many people are interested in automobiles, cars? All right. How many people are interested in sports? All right. How many people are interested in entertainment, movies? Okay. Well, in all those particular subject areas, there are ways to make a living in journalism by following those interests. There are people who review movies, people who do nothing but write about, automobiles. You go to the newsstand, you see Car and Driver, Automobiles Magazine, Motor Trend. All those people do is get cars, take them out, drive them, and review them. That's a pretty nice way to make a living. Fashion, if you're covering fashion, you go to the fashion shows in Paris, in Milan, in New York. You cover new designers in Chicago, if you're based in Chicago or wherever you might be based. All those interests are areas that other people are interested in too, and that people make a living writing about or covering for radio and TV. So I just want to make sure that you understand that there are, news isn't just the fire on the corner. It's not just, who got shot down the block. It's also all those other areas, maybe are more feature oriented, but there are publications that particularly look at those areas, and if you're interested in them, and you're interested enough to think you might want to make a career out of covering them, then you can do that. That is a possibility. Back to the panel now. We talked about how for many of us, our careers are the product of this window of opportunity that opened up after the civil rights era. And we also talked about how racism is still present. More specifically, how is racism still present in the media? And how does it manifest itself on a daily basis or on a regular basis in the media that you observe, or the workings of the media that you observe? And let's start with Maureen this time.
Well, let's take racism, like sitting in this room right here, and how is it manifesting itself? Here you have the history makers. Here you have educators, you have students, you have journalists, and where's the press? Okay, that's racism right there. This is something positive. If someone was in here being murdered, raped, or slaughtered, the press would be here. But here you have racism because the press isn't here to cover this story that should be on the 4 o'clock news. So it manifests itself by the way, anytime African Americans have something positive to show, they're not present. Now this is an event. Cathy Hughes is doing an interview tomorrow. I mean, I hear it and I've announced it over my station, but where's 2579, 11, and Telemundo? Where are they? So racism still exists because this is not important. It's important to us, but to the white media, it's not. So this is where it takes, we have to come together and find funding, just as Ms. Hughes has found, to own our own so we can give the news out. Because the correct news is not in the white press, because as you know, editors, you can write and editors still edit what you're saying. And sometimes they can edit out 1 or 2 words and make the whole paragraph mean something totally different. So this is how it manifests itself, by not exposing the whole community to what's going on in everyday life. Where's the press?
Cathy.
I'll pass on that one because my opinion on that is you're supposed to own your own. To me, a lot of things in the media that we consider racism is just simply white folks looking out for white folks. And I think that black folks have an obligation to look out for black folks and not expect white folks to do it. I think that every group of people, that's the reason I think that ownership, regardless of the area, Michael Jordan was treated terribly in Washington, D.C. by Abe Pollin, the white owner of the Wizards. If Michael Jordan had owned the Wizards, he would not have been disrespected the way he was disrespected in Washington, D.C. So my whole take on racism is, hey, it's a reality, that's a white folks problem, let them deal with it. I want to concentrate on us buying our own everything and controlling it.
And it's very difficult to refute that impeccable logic. However, even as we strive and struggle to become owners, we still have to deal within this context of the white media. And we have to make alterations in it that benefit us so that we can learn our own power, because it won't transmit to us our own inherent power. And that's really the point. Each of you is an extremely powerful being, but you'll never know that by the information you get from the media that we're exposed to. And so we have to infiltrate that media as best we can to provide you with the knowledge you need to become fully realized. And that's part of the struggle. We work in both directions. One of the things I have done throughout my life is work in both the alternative media the black-owned media where we own media and are trying to construct different images of who we are, and in the mainstream media where we have to still try to construct different images of who we are, but we have to do it with an extraordinarily amount of difficulty. But the battle is on two fronts, and we have to work assiduously on both of them.
Yesterday afternoon, as every afternoon at the Tribune at 4 o'clock, we have a meeting where all the top editors get together to decide what's going to be on page 1 the next day. And we were sitting there having this discussion. The top editor of the Tribune is a woman, Anne Marie Lipinski, but she didn't happen to be there yesterday. But we're sitting there having this discussion. There are about 20 people in the room, and I sat back and looked around. There was exactly one black person in the room, myself. There were 2 women in the room, neither with a speaking role. It makes you understand why newspaper circulation, and the Tribune is no exception, has been going down, down, down. And readership and all the surveys tell us you're not meeting the reader where they want to be met. It's because, we're still acting like it's 1950, like Derrick was talking about, white men in white shirts. And I don't think there's anything malicious. It's blindness.
Or self-interest, as Cathy.
Exactly.
Yeah. We also want to take your questions. So if you have any questions as we're going along, please put your hand up, not like this. Okay, all right, there you go, like that, so I can see it, and we'll acknowledge them and we'll weave them into the discussion. After you ask this question, I also want to ask Cathy to talk to us a little bit about TVOne, how that got off the ground, where it is now, and what was the impetus for it, okay? What's your name, please?
It's Shayna Harris.
Okay, and where you go to school, Katrina?
Lincoln Park High School.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question for you because I'm
Yeah.
trying to get more into the field of journalism, and I'm thinking about applying to Northwestern and Addison. And I just wanted you to explain how's your experience, because I know it's kind of hard to get into school.
Yeah, it is hard to get in, but that shouldn't dissuade you because things that are hard to do are often worthwhile. I think it's an excellent journalism school. I think it's a very good place for black people to go to school, period. I think it has a active, there's changes, from period to period. But I do I live in Evanston, and I do keep in touch with what's going on the campus. I think generally it has an active African American community, and the journalism school is a crucible. It's kind of like boot camp. They bring you in, and they kind of carry you down and then build you back up. Because all these kids, coming out of high school think they're all, Hemingway or James Baldwin or something, and they really can't, write a simple declarative sentence. So part of it is kind of, that's part of the process. And some kids, black and white, get into that and they feel they get discouraged, But it's just a process that you go through. But I can tell you one thing: if you go there for 4 years and you graduate, you will be able to produce a news story on deadline when you graduate. I started at Columbia, New York. That's where I went my freshman year. I transferred because I decided I wanted an undergraduate journalism education because I knew that when I walked into a newsroom, there weren't going to be a lot of people there willing to put their arm around me and give me the benefit of the doubt. So I wanted to be able to perform at an acceptable level the first day I walked in. And that's why I wanted to get some kind of undergraduate journalism training. There is an argument about that. What's the best way? Some people say, well, just go get a liberal arts degree and then get a master's degree. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to get a job after 4 years in school, and you want to get a job at a newspaper and a media outlet, I think that's an excellent place to go. It's not the only place to go. University of Illinois also has a very good journalism school. It's a lot cheaper. Illinois isn't as easy to get into as it used to be either. But it is just economically more affordable. And I would certainly, since you're from Chicago, I'd apply to both. And there are other places too. I'm not downing any other place, but you asked about Northwestern, and I wholeheartedly. And if you look at if you look at the track record of people who have graduated from there, the school has very good connections in Chicago, very good connections in the Midwest. And you look at the career path of people, including a lot of African Americans who have graduated from there, done very well. So I would encourage you to do that if you can. Okay. Cathy, tell us about TVOne. Tell us about why it's a revolutionary departure.
TVOne is a new cable channel. For 25 years, the only major cable channel in this country for African Americans was BET. And a lot of folks put a lot of pressure on BET to be everything to everybody. But BET was specifically created to provide nonstop entertainment. And its target demographic has always been you all, young people. Well, so many older folks in the African American community were frustrated because there was no outlet for them in the world of cable. And so they kept turning to BET and expecting BET to be able to program to all demographics. In the media, you select who you're trying to reach. Whether it's print media or electronic media, you just don't toss it out there and hope that everybody or somebody likes it. You specifically select a demographic. And BET specifically selected young people with the age ending at first around 24, and then they upped it to around 30. But the majority of the movers and shakers in the African American community are over 30 now, even if they started off in the hip hop generation. As I said, the hip hop generation now is 30 years old. Russell Simmons is almost 50, and he is the man that took it off the block and put it in the boardroom. So for 4 years, my son, who is my president and CEO of Radio One, which owns TVOne, worked on a proposal to bring to fruition a cable channel specifically targeted to African American adults over the age of 30. So what does that mean? Does it mean we won't have entertainment? No, we will have entertainment, but we won't have Nelly jumping up and down and having some beautiful young girls in, right, exactly, all right. We'll have some folks doing some stepping. We will have movies, but they won't be the movies that are most popular with you all. There'll be movies with people that are more of our liking, like Denzel and Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte and what you all call old school. And one of the interesting things that has happened since we've been on the air, we launched January 19th, excuse me, Martin Luther King's birthday. And one of the interesting things that's happened is while our target demographic is in fact older African Americans, we're pulling you all because we're doing reruns of shows that you all have never seen before. One that's particularly popular with the BET crowd is Good Times. And most people had no idea how revolutionary, and as you know, it takes place here in Chicago, all right, how advanced and revolutionary Michael was, and how progressive this show was. This show was talking about JJ painting a black Jesus 30 years ago, when most churches now are still struggling with the concept that Jesus was in fact black. All right, period, paragraph. All right, and all of this was on Good Times 25 years ago. But you all are accustomed to comedy in the vein of a Steve Harvey or a Jamie Foxx or a Bernie Mac, not realizing that the comedians of yesteryear, the Dick Gregory's, the Richard Pryors, the comedians who really opened the doors, had social consciousness as the foundation for their comedy. They just weren't telling jokes to be funny. They were telling jokes to really make you think and to empower their community. That's what TVOne is about. We launched in January. We're up to close to 6 million subs. Subs are households. We're presently negotiating with DirecTV, which would bring another 11 million on. We have exceeded all of our projections because there's a thirst in the community for adult programming for African Americans. Sorry, my answer was so long, but I get enthusiastic, and if I could just take 2 more seconds and introduce Susan Banks, my Senior VP of Marketing and Imaging, who spent 23 years with CBS and left them to come because to TVOne because she felt that it was important to be part of what we were trying to do in terms of empowering our community, and Nikki Weber, who is 23 herself, a joke, right, ×2, one of our executive producers.
Do you know what demographics are? She used the word demographics. You know what that is?